Hello, everyone. Good morning. And well, good morning for us. Welcome to another episode of Modern Mom, where we talk about being a mom in the 21st century. My name is Remy Kay. I'm a certified life and relationship coach. I'm also a comedian and candidate for Cupertino Union School District for 2024. I have with me Susan Salop. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, Susan is
Advocacy.
advocacy. Okay, advocacy and inclusion for PTA Council, part of the Ed Foundation for fundraising, leads fundraising for Ed Foundation, high school PTA or PTSA, VP of Communications, treasurer of an additional campaign, and you mentioned that candidate specifically,
Yes,
which
Eileen Lay.
Eileen Lee. Okay, and then you also are working on a neighborhood candidates training program which I would definitely want to get into. So obviously Susan's very involved. So the first thing that you mentioned to me that was really interesting to me is you said you lived in Asia for like 13 years. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I was an exchange student in high school for a summer to Japan, and then I got really interested in Asia. And so in college, I studied East Asian studies, mainly like it's kind of like a Japanese major. Spent my junior year abroad in Japan, and then after that, I ended up going back to Japan and working for 5 years. Wanted to expand my horizons beyond Japan, so I went to China for 2 years to learn Chinese. Came back for grad school. That's when the dot-com bust happened. So headed back to Asia, where there are a lot more opportunities. To Japan again for I guess about 3.5 years. Went to China for a year again to work, and then finally landed in Silicon Valley in late 2006 because
Okay.
my sister had relocated here.
Nice. So
Yeah.
what kind of attracted you to the Asian market? Was it, when you were choosing your exchange student
Mhm.
program, what made you choose Asia?
Yeah, that's a great question. So initially, I wanted to go to South Africa or Indonesia just because of all the things that this was like kind of late 80s. Just politically, all the things that were happening in those countries. But my parents were like, you should go to Japan. It seems like a safer place. So it was kind of a compromise, but it ended up being, I'm so glad that we had that compromise because it ended up changing my life. Had an amazing experience living with a host family. And I was in the city of Kyoto, which is this amazing place. So just really fell in love with the country, and that's what really got me into studying more seriously in college.
That's so cool. We actually just found out that we're both from the East Coast.
Mhm,
So I was born in Boston. I was in Westford,
mhm.
Massachusetts for a lot of my early childhood. And you were also in New Hampshire. And I visited New Hampshire very
Mhm.
frequently, actually.
Yeah, yeah. So I was also born in Boston, lived in Massachusetts, I think for about 6 months. Then we moved a little bit to Connecticut, New Jersey, but then pretty much from first grade, I was in New Hampshire until the end of my high school. So yeah, probably like 40-minute drive from where you were living.
So I love that because I know I have a lot of great memories from my
Mhm,
school experience in
mhm,
Massachusetts. We were very, I felt like, and I don't know, obviously, because I never went through first through fifth grade here. So I don't know what that's
mhm,
like, except my children are now going through the Cupertino Union School District. But I just remember like learning things, and I know the times have changed as
yeah.
well, but learning cursive, having, knowing all the names of the whales
Yeah.
and things like that. What was your experience with being in school in the East Coast?
Yeah, no, it's funny. The things I remember, we did a lot of outdoor stuff.
Yeah.
Like we in eighth grade, we had a camping trip where we actually camped for a week. We climbed this mountain. Um, and that was one thing. We also had like an early man unit where we went behind the school and did all these kind of projects, made a fort, found water, all that kind of stuff. So I think I remember just like maple syrup, tapping a tree to make maple syrup. So I remember a lot of stuff like that. And yeah, very different from here because it's like one town, one school district. Whereas here you have multiple school districts across different cities.
Yeah.
Um, even for example, I live in Sunnyvale. Um, my son went to Sunnyvale School District for elementary and middle school, and then he transitioned to the high school district, which is different. So it's very, very different. Both are good, just different.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So you're really involved in advocacy and inclusion,
Mhm.
and that's kind of what started you on this path. So tell me a little bit about that and what that looked like
Yeah.
for you.
So my son has learning differences, so he has an IEP, which means he gets extra help in things like speech and other areas in school. So I was just looking for different ways that just to have more inclusion efforts for him and other kids like him. So I got involved in the PTA, actually middle school. A lot of people get involved in PTA kind of earlier, but my journey was a little bit later. And the PTA in middle school, actually PTSA, they were really excited about being more inclusive. The principal, everyone, teachers. So we just started doing like an inclusive club at lunch once a week. We did some field trips that were inclusion focused, and yeah, that's how I kind of got started, kind of on this journey, and then that got me more involved in the PTAs and PTSAs across my school district, and then some of the at the PTA council level.
Yeah, so now you're doing PTA council, and that's how I met Susan
Mhm,
actually, is you reached out to me because
mhm,
I'm a candidate for the
mhm,
school board. And that I felt very, you've great energy
mhm,
and you have a great history. You've been in high tech, you've done a
mhm.
lot of things in your life, and now you're kind of doing the council thing. What got you involved in, because you're a treasurer for another candidate as well. What got you involved on that side of things? What made you think
Yeah,
that? Yeah.
I think it was mainly because as I started doing this inclusion advocacy in the school district, I just met other parents who are working on advocacy in other areas. There's a group called Sunnyvale Equity in Education, which does a lot to, for example, things they promote like having better transportation options for kids from North Sunnyvale to go to Fremont High School um, because it's a bit far.
Yeah.
Things like having new districts. As you know, when you run for a candidate for a really large district, it's really expensive and it's
Mhm.
hard. So it prevents a lot of candidates from running. And
Yeah.
if you have smaller districts, then there's more people who can participate, and then
Hmm.
they also know their neighborhood better, and so it's like it's a bit easier. So this group also helped advocate to have districts for Fremont Union High School District trustee areas
Yes.
and things like that. So I kind of got involved with that group a bit, and that kind of led me to the PTA council. Mhm,
Oh, cool. I'm glad that you brought up the whole trustee area versus the larger
mhm,
district because that is something I was looking at Fremont Union
mhm,
High School District for a moment, and because I am eligible
mhm,
for Area 5.
mhm,
So what are your thoughts and feedback about, because just recently Fremont Union High School District divided up into
yes. Mhm,
areas, whereas Cupertino is thinking about, hey, should we do
mhm,
this or not?
yeah.
What are some of the things you've seen? You mentioned one benefit, which is that maybe a campaign wouldn't be as expensive. Tell me more about kind of your
Yeah,
thoughts.
I think when you have individual areas, you just have more representation from those areas. And one big thing is cost because it is just if you're, let's say an area is 40,000 residents or 50,000 residents, and there's five districts, 250,000 residents are really hard to reach.
Hmm.
Whereas if you have a smaller area, it's easier, also to meet that community, to go out
Yeah.
and do something called canvassing, which is like kind of knocking on doors and saying hi and sharing your vision of how you want to help that area. When you have a it's just literally impossible
Yeah.
to do that. So I think those are the real benefits. Really, you just get more representation from those areas,
Yeah.
and it just that more people can kind of get involved, which is what we want, right?
Mhm.
And
That
also, each area might have kind of sort of differences in the community.
Mhm.
One area might be, for example, predominantly Spanish speaking. Another area might be predominantly Chinese speaking. So it's also easier to just get the message out. Mhm.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know.
For
Yeah, because
example.
yeah, because I'm wondering because that's one thing that they're thinking about doing for
Mhm,
Cupertino Union School District as well, and that's one of the questions that I've received
mhm,
about, what does that look like? And I would like to get more feedback from community
mhm.
members and especially involved community
Absolutely.
members like you to kind of understand, what do you see? And do you see those advantages kind of taking place now that Fremont Union High School District
Mhm.
is doing the area?
Yeah, it just happened. So
Yeah.
they're actually it's let's see, trustee area district. I think it's 2 and 5 are
Mhm.
up for election this year. So then we'll have we'll see. But I think it's exciting because you're going to have those two areas specifically. I believe have never had in the history since the Fremont Union High School District was started. I don't think they've ever had representatives,
Really?
or if they did, it was a very long time ago. No, we're not aware of any.
Okay.
So it's really exciting because those two areas are going to have kind of a seat at the table, can
Yeah.
represent their communities. So yeah, I personally think it's a good thing just because I just want more people to be able to get involved
Yeah.
and for there to be less barriers of entry.
Right.
So I think trustee areas really, yeah.
So that's a great transition to talk about being a new candidate and kind of trying out, for me, this is my first time running for any type of elected official. And I was very surprised. I'm glad I didn't know because if I did, I probably would not have
Yeah.
signed up to run. But I was very surprised at how many layers there were to running for office. So you've been kind of involved in this
Mhm.
area for a while. So, kind of if you'd be willing to share your insight.
Yeah, no, I definitely think there it is. I mean, to be quite honest, there is a steep learning curve, and it's really just fine. I think most people figure it out just by talking to other people, but of course, it would be better to have trainings, and there's different organizations, and I'm actually working with a group in North Sunnyvale that we're looking to put together a training program too, and there's other organizations that are doing this, but there's just a lot of nuts and bolts to it. Like, first of all, I think the first step is whatever role you're applying for, let's say if it's a school board or a city council, start going to the school board meetings, city council meetings, and a lot of them you can access on Zoom, which is great. So you can even just listen in, start participating during public comment, just to see how it works. And that's the best way to figure out if it's something that a candidate is interested in, because it's and it's a big time commitment as well. The meetings are long and stuff, but it's fascinating though, the conversations that come up and the impact that board members can make. So it's just but first, I think that's the first step is just like going to those meetings and just kind of seeing what it's like. Then, if you're interested, then you start getting your campaign together, and you've probably gone through a lot of this. Um, Things like you have to actually, there's a whole registration process to do that, and there's multiple steps, things like that. Also, you actually need money because you have to get your message out. So through a
Yeah,
lot of us
raising
see,
money has been very
yeah, yeah,
interesting.
campaign flyers, ads, either maybe online or in kind of local, either kind of newspapers or community newsletters, things like that.
Mhm.
That's one area, just the whole advertising, getting your word out. Street signs, that's another. I mean, or yard signs
Yard
rather.
signs.
Yard signs is a better word. So there's all of that. Then there's, you want to get endorsements. So you have to,
Right.
who do you get endorsements from? And,
Yeah.
finding the people who have the same values as you, finding those people, getting in and there's a whole process for that.
Right.
So it's a lot of work,
Mhm.
but of course it's so rewarding and the impact is so big. I mean, these school districts and city councils do make big decisions that affect all of us. So,
Yeah,
and
I
then
agree.
there's other steps too. But yeah, those are just some of the initial things, like you say, like raising money. How
Yeah.
do you raise money? And I think for what a lot of candidates do, first up is they just reach out to their close
Yeah.
networks, family and friends, colleagues at work, former colleagues, former classmates. That's how you get a base, and then you start to do kind of events, to bring in other people into your network, people who share your values,
Mhm.
and then you can also get endorsements. You might have seen this from different political organizations,
Mhm.
um, who are advocating for different things again that have the same values as you. So,
Yeah, exactly. No, that's great.
but it's a
Yeah.
lot, right? It's a
It's
lot.
a lot.
It's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad I didn't know. And I just take it kind of one step at a time and I do the best I can with what I have. And and I'm in the race. And
Yeah.
so, kind of doing the best and I get to meet cool people like you who have been doing this for a while. And so it's definitely been a different experience. I really, really am glad that I did this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you were in high tech before, right?
Yes.
So
So,
did you work in Asia and then you were working here as well?
yes.
Okay.
So I worked in Asia. I was doing more, kind of sales and marketing related jobs in Asia. And then when I relocated here late 2006. Then I got into, you know, working in internet companies, and a big focus I was in online advertising, things like search ads, display ads, video ads, all that kind of stuff. And that was, and then I worked at, let's see, three different companies, but then one company got acquired. So I guess I worked at four different companies, before I kind of I took a step back right before the pandemic.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, I feel like there's a little bit more. I think Silicon Valley very how do I say this? Like there's a very traditional working schedule and routine, but I think that's slowly starting to change now. And I know for me, ironically, like when my kids were younger, it was easier for me to work outside of the home
Mhm.
because they didn't really care who was changing their diaper or anything like that. But now that they're at this age, so my kids are 7 and 8, and they need a lot more attention and they need a lot more like they don't even want to do sports outside of doing them with me because they want to spend more time with me. They don't like the idea of like being away from me and doing it. So I've been kind of compromising with them and playing like tennis with them and teaching them sports and doing playing catch with them so that they can continue to be active or being with them while they're swimming. But also, so that they can be active, but then also spend that time with me. So I think it's important to try if it's possible, and I know it's not always
Mhm.
possible financially, but to try to find a way to make that work. And so was that kind of what happened for you as well?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I feel like when the kids are younger, I have one son. He's a freshman in high school now, but it's pretty easy. They go to daycare, and again, I'm someone who has privilege. I can afford daycare. I'm very lucky. I acknowledge that. But they go to daycare all day, and they get their meals there,
Yeah.
and they get their activities. You drop them off in the morning, and then you pick them up. 5 or 6 o'clock.
And they've
They've
socialized. Yeah.
socialized. They've eaten their meal. They
Yeah.
probably get better cooked meals than they do at home. So it's kind of easy. I mean, yeah, and I mean, my son had extra things like speech therapy and stuff, but still, it was when he was young. It was quite easy. But then once they start getting into the school, now there's TK, but from kindergarten, it's a whole new thing because they get out earlier in the day and a lot of schools have after school, but it's really hard to get into these after school
Yeah.
programs just because there's not that many spots.
Mhm.
And then you have to, when I was, but I think, by the time I had really busy job where I was traveling overseas a lot, my husband was taking a bit of a break from work, so he was able to do a lot of the pickups and stuff. But yeah, it's as they get, I find as they get older, actually they kind of need you more.
Yeah.
Whereas when they're younger, they're at daycare,
It's like the level
yeah,
of care, not the level of care, but the type of care needed is not so specified.
yeah,
And they're not, it's like they're happy playing with their friends and they're doing
yeah,
things. But ironically, and I think this is almost counterintuitive to what maybe there's an assumption of like kids like to be with their friends more as they
mhm,
get older. But they actually, I find with my kids, they like to be with the safety of their mom
yeah,
after school. And yeah, I schedule play dates with them, but
mhm,
even that takes work, right? Like organizing the play dates and getting them over there and things like that.
yeah.
But it's like I found that, especially my oldest daughter, she loves to spend time with me.
Yeah, I mean, my son is always, yeah, he likes spending time with us as well, and doing stuff either after school or on the weekends when he doesn't have other things going on. But yeah, they definitely need you when they're older, and then you get into, they might need like tutoring or just they want to do some sports, and then you have to, obviously taking them around everywhere. So you become a bit of a chaperone, activities director.
Activities director,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
that's what I call
that.
that's what I call, because my son's like, "What activities are we doing this weekend?" I'm like, "Okay." So, so I think there's a lot of that. Yeah. So I definitely think like at least from my experience, and I had a friend who has 3 kids, and she told me that years ago. She said, yeah, well, her kids needed her more when they like middle school and high school than when they were really little.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, so yeah, I
And
think
so
that.
now you've kind of gone to this transition
Mhm,
away from the traditional 9 to 5
mhm.
into
Into yeah, so just a lot of volunteer work.
Mhm.
Actually, right, like during the pandemic and right after the pandemic, I did a lot of volunteer work with with an exchange student organization. So
Oh,
I was an exchange student to Japan high school,
yeah.
totally changed my life. So there's a local, it's called AFS, great organization. I volunteered with them for a few years. I was doing a lot, helping them get through the pandemic, and because a lot of these organizations took a big hit, right?
Mhm.
Because it was actually quite crazy because we had exchange students here in the Bay Area, I think 25 of them. They all had to like leave
Oh, they
quickly,
did.
right? Because of the in
Pandemic.
yeah, March, April, and some
Yeah.
some of them so there was a lot of organization around
Yeah,
that.
full shutdown in
Full
March.
shutdown, especially in California. And then one year, no students
Did you have
came.
any idea that was gonna happen?
No,
Really?
real no. I,
I saw it coming.
oh, you did? Yeah,
I saw it
I didn't really think
because
about
I
it.
started hearing about it in February, late
Yeah.
February, and people were starting to buzz about, "Hey, this thing's going around and it's really, really contagious." And I remember getting on the phone with my manager and being like, "Hey, should we be coming into the office right now? Because this thing is, kind of coming from where was it at the time?
Um, it
Wuhan. It was coming
yeah,
from
it
Wuhan.
was
And there was a lot
and
of
cruise ships.
cruise ships
Yeah.
and a lot of the tech companies, they've got contract manufacturers in Wuhan.
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
And so
Yeah.
we had people
Yeah.
traveling around that area and back. And I was like, should we be staying home? And I remember him kind of saying, you can if you want to. And then 2 weeks later, they were like, you should stay home. And then you have to stay home. And then you have to get VP approval to come into the office, like within a month. So I was like,
You guys had you sort of saw it a little bit earlier. I
oh,
wasn't
really?
yeah, I mean, the only thing I remember we had a very fun family vacation, like, the last week in February in Hawaii, and I remember there was, like, a cruise ship kind of
Oh, no.
we're sitting, by the pool at the condo, whatever, and I was like, "Oh, I wonder, like" and then I remember talking to the people, just in the hot tub, whatever, and then we were like, "Oh, yeah, I wonder what's gonna happen with that." And then literally like 3 weeks later, there was a huge that's one of my distinct memories of the early pandemic was seeing that cruise ship and being like, "Oh, I wonder what's gonna happen." But I didn't I no, I didn't. I had no idea. I had no
Yeah,
idea.
yeah. So anything and so everything changed. The students got sent back
Yeah.
to where they were exchanging from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. So yeah, but a lot of them couldn't go until like June or July because the flights it was actually quite interesting because a lot of countries, I think Austria might have been one where they had they had charter flights where they brought their
Mm.
because there's a lot of students, across the United States and from Austria or wherever. And so they had charter flights that brought them back. So this AFS organization had to kind of get the student to Washington D.C. and then they would all take the charter flight back. And
Oh,
it was
wow.
a lot. I wasn't directly involved in it, but a lot of the staff were. But as a volunteer, then the next year there were no exchange students, and then the following year we started bringing exchange students back. Yeah,
Okay,
and
like 2022.
yeah, and it's also sad because if you think about a lot of people plan for years to do these programs and they miss their window, you know?
Yeah.
So they're, and I still think these organizations are kind of still coming back
Oh,
just because,
good.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
good. Yeah, that was a hard time.
yeah.
My kids were really young during the
Hmm.
pandemic, and I remember bringing them back to a playground because the playgrounds have been closed
Hmm.
for a year
Yeah.
basically, and they didn't know what to do.
Yeah, they miss that. I mean, a lot of the younger kids miss the socials. My son was it happened when he was in 4th grade. So he was actually okay. He had his Zoom classes. My sister's in the area, so we would go visit her. My mom was I think we'll talk about that as well, this kind of sandwich church thing. So my mom was
Yes.
starting to early stages of dementia, so we would go
Oh.
visit her and help her out and my sister. But yeah, it was so we actually fared okay. I mean, we fared okay, and we did have a few friends who we would again maybe meet in a park in a safe location once it was okay to do so.
Mhm.
And again, we're in California, so at least the weather's nice, so we
Yeah.
could like go take a walk or go to the beach, and so
Yeah, the
I
hiking
think we were
trails
lucky.
got really popular.
Yeah, we were lucky. Like I think just our family, just we were able, and again, privilege and all that stuff. I
Yeah.
totally acknowledge that, but we were okay, and we were able to keep my son busy. Just with I did a lot of reading and extra work with him and all
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, that was kind of a time. So you were talking about the sandwich generation thing. So let's talk about that because it is an interesting time where maybe you were talking about your mother and kind of taking care of her and then also having to take care of your son at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. So my sister and my mom both live in Fremont, which is, about a half an hour from here. And a week before the pandemic, my mom had a minor stroke. And she was okay, but she was living on her own then, but it didn't really she basically went to stay with my sister, who's a single mom, has 2 kids who were I believe in a middle school or high school at that time. And and then it just didn't really if it had been normal times, we probably would have found a senior living, assisted living at that time. But as you remember, it wasn't really a safe place for seniors at that time because
Mhm.
COVID was raging. It was when COVID was like a stronger strain.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, a lot of people died in these facilities, even
Yeah.
though, a lot the ones around here are amazing. So my mom ended up staying with my sister for 2 years, and then I would help out. I would go over a few days a week and help out with, and it was good for my son too. He got some socialization, but yeah, it's I think a lot of people are seeing that. When I talk to people around my age, with kids, let's say middle school, high school, even maybe college, they're kind of trying to help their kids and they're also helping their parents. And as you know, people live to be real it's a good thing, but like it's really common to live into your 90s now. So,
Mhm.
it's just, when I was growing up, most people probably lived into their 70s and 80s,
Mhm.
right? So people are living longer, which is good, but it's more like how do you support, your kids, but also kind of also support, your aging parents. And we've been very lucky with my mom after the pandemic kind of, or when it kind of settled down. We moved her into an assisted living in San Jose, really, and she loves it there. It's a lot of activities and she's doing really well there. So
Oh,
yeah.
good.
But again,
Good.
level privilege to be able to,
Yeah.
yeah, we're lucky
So
that she can
that's
go there.
now though, but during the time of the pandemic, you had to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. So my sister did a lot of the heavy lifting, because she lived with my sister. And my niece and nephew were amazing. Like they didn't mind her being there and stuff, so they were really good sports. And yeah, and I would, a few days a week would go over and kind of help my sister, take my mom out, go for walks, all that kind of stuff. And on the weekends, give my sister a bit of a break too.
Yeah, that's a lot. Wow, bless
Mhm.
her.
Yeah.
That's yeah, I mean, that's something I think that's legit. And with other cultures, as you probably know,
Mhm.
it's almost assisted living is not
Yes, totally
prevalent
get
in
that.
other
Yeah.
cultures and
Yep.
countries. And so it's going to be interesting. I mean, I already see it now where, there are families that kind of have the grandparents, living
Yep.
in or they live with the grandparents or whatever it is. And so seeing more of that, I think that's going to become the norm.
Yeah, and there's a lot of facilities, if you just in this part, like Silicon Valley, there are so many new assisted living memory care facilities being built, and some of them are, for example, focus on South Asian folks of South Asian descent,
Mhm.
where they'll have folks who speak local languages.
Oh,
I've
nice.
seen some Chinese language ones as well, so we're seeing a lot of those sprouting up too. Mhm.
Wow, that's
Yeah, so
wonderful.
at least it'll. I mean, it depends on the person. My mom is a great fit for assisted living memory care because she loves the community. She just likes activity and people and all that kind of stuff. But you see some people are not. They're more quiet and they don't. maybe it's not for them. But for my mom, it's been a good fit.
Oh, good. Yeah, I guess that's important too to understand is
Hmm.
maybe it's not for everyone and it's not a cookie cutter type of thing. You
Yeah.
have to find what works
Yep.
for each family.
Yeah, and a lot of, I have friends whose parents live in these kind of retirement communities where the parents are still, both my father passed away a long time ago, but for them, their parents are both alive, and they'll live in like an apartment where someone checks in on them or
Mhm.
maybe brings meals. So there's all kinds of different options.
Oh, good.
But again, most of it's not government funded at all.
Yeah.
Some states, I think Arizona has pretty good programs.
Okay.
I've heard, but California, you pretty much have to pay for it yourself. So
Mm.
again, you know, that's a problem in itself.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah,
I
that
don't.
can get expensive,
Yeah.
especially on top of rents and
Yes.
mortgages and things
Yes.
like
All that
that.
kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so self-care. So let's talk about it.
Mhm.
Moms and self-care.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really important. I I've been pretty good about over the years doing exercise routines, especially when I stopped traveling a lot. To be quite honest, when I traveled like 2 weeks a month, I was not good. I was not the person who would get up at 5 a.m. when I'm in Tokyo and like go to the gym and then go to my meeting. Like yeah, I couldn't do it. I didn't exercise much when I was traveling like that. But once now that I'm here and not traveling as much, I belong to a really wonderful hot yoga studio. Unfortunately, it closed down during the
Ah,
pandemic. And then I started to do more of the online exercise, which I never really liked working out at home, but now I'm sort of okay. I still prefer in person. So I do some of the subscription model places, like Les Mills. There's a great program called The Class by Taryn Tooney,
okay.
which has live classes and on-demand classes. I do that, and then I go to Crunch Gym, and then I also recently started Rumble, which is like kind of a boxing. So I like to mix it up.
Fun.
I do a few different things just to kind of keep it interesting.
I
Yeah.
love that. So actually, I'm getting my yoga teaching certification.
Oh, that's
I'm in the
great.
middle of it right now. So I'm planning, my hope is because I'm doing, as you know, I'm like a certified life
Yeah.
coach and
Mhm,
relationship coach. And so that's kind of to bring that
mhm,
into that
mhm.
service. But also, I want to bring free yoga classes to the community
Oh, that's
and
great.
have options. And I want to do like a mother, mommy and me,
Mhm.
and daddy's too
Yep.
yoga, and also do sound bath yoga.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
which
so
is
cute.
kind of, incorporating I'm getting my certification in sound healing
Oh, nice.
and in yoga,
Mhm.
and so I'm excited to bring some fun stuff because I think self-care is so essential. And I actually that's one of the things I talk about when I do any kind of panel that has to do with CUSD, kind of
Mhm,
board whenever I talk on any panels. That's one of the things I bring up is that, self care, I don't, obviously safety is an issue and self care or, kind of mental health,
mhm.
right? And so my whole strategy behind that is, if we're waiting for the crisis, we're too late. And so really jumping ahead of it and doing things like incorporating different types of, meditation, cooling off, pause periods, conflict resolution,
Yep. That's
and I
great.
think, that starts at home. Like if moms are doing that for themselves, like kids really get to see that, this is kind of how we deal with things.
Absolutely, yeah, and no, I love all of that, and mindfulness, I think I also, took a really great mindfulness class right before the pandemic, and then the facilitator of that kept kind of she calls it alumni classes every week on Zoom. Although I've lately with PTA stuff, I haven't been going as much as I want to, but that's like I want to get back into that. So I think
Yeah.
that's great. And just giving people time to just kind of get more energy. One thing I always like I try to do is just like take a walk
Yeah.
and also I try to do something fun with my son.
Hmm.
Like I said, he has learning disabilities, so
Hmm.
there's lots of therapies and tutoring, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I also like to have time just so I always tell friends who have kids with similar situations, have just like enjoy your kid. So
Hmm.
we'll take actually this park here, we'll take a walk
Yeah.
here, or we'll go to the beach, or just like once or twice a week, do something fun with them.
This park is beautiful.
Yeah,
They've got like the Aztec
yeah,
designs and stuff. It's really cool. I
yeah.
like this park.
Yeah, just like enjoy, and let them kind of relax and enjoy nature. I think
Yeah.
that's it can be really easy too. It doesn't have to be something super intense. Just like take a 35-minute walk. And my husband and my son do that a lot too. They yesterday they went to a park on the bay and just like walked around for an hour. So I think that's
Nice.
really important. But yeah, self-care is something I'm really passionate. It's great that you're doing all
Yeah.
even now, like if you look at my calendar, I try to just at least block off,
Yeah.
let's say 4 or 5 days a week to do some kind of exercise.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I mean, sometimes things get canceled and stuff, but at least if you block your schedule, and actually, I was talking to a friend yesterday who wants to get back into an exercise
Yeah.
routine, and she's like, "What should I do?" And I'm like, "Send me your calendar." So
Yeah.
she sent me her calendar, and sure enough, like she's really busy, but 12 to 2,
Hmm.
we're kind of open most days of the week. I'm
Okay.
like, boom, I said, right now, go in your calendar
Hmm.
and block those times off. and then that's when you're going to do your work, and find either do it at home, which she's okay with, or find a gym class. And a lot of gyms have classes at lunchtime.
Yeah.
I said, this is what you do, it at a time that's easy for you.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
like she's busy in the morning, she's busy in the afternoons, but that 12 to 2 was like a sweet spot for her.
Nice.
So I think it's all about, I'm like really into calendar and just
Yeah.
like putting it on. And
Oh my
again,
gosh.
sometimes things happen, but if you put it on,
Yeah.
like, let's say I put it on for 5 6 days a week, and then I'm only able to go 4, that's still great. Like, that's great,
Oh
right?
yeah, no,
Yeah.
totally. It's true. And things do come up. And I think having that flexibility
Hmm.
is important. I love that scheduling and blocking off. I'm a big calendar
Hmm.
user. I'm huge on that. And I love to block off times and I like to block off, specific times. But sometimes if I do find that I have
Hmm.
free time, because there are a lot of activities I just love to do. I love climbing.
Hmm.
I've just gotten into pickleball. I played
Yeah.
pickleball a few times. It's an intense sport.
Yeah.
My whole thing when I get on the court, I'm like, look, I love this game and I'll have a good time, but I'm not going to break anything.
Hmm.
Like, if the ball is coming out of the court and it's a choice between my wrist and the ball,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna choose my wrist. But, just things like that, and so I noticed that, also having an accountability partner. So
Mhm.
I have, like, a person who I lift with once a week,
Oh, nice.
and she shows up at, like, 6 in the morning every Wednesday, and I'm like, "Thank goodness, because I don't work out 6 in the morning the other days of the week,"
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah,
it's just like, and it's just finding the time that you can actually do, versus trying to do something that it's just not like a convenient time, you know. I
yeah,
think that's the first step. Yeah. And then just mixing it up and finding something you enjoy. Like,
yeah,
I actually I like it. And going to classes is fun because there's people there, and you meet people in the community. So yeah, it's funny. A lot of people from the gym I'll just meet in other places,
yeah.
like at campaign events and other stuff. Like, oh yeah, you go to my gym.
Oh, how
Yeah.
funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's funny. I don't know if it's an age thing, but I feel like there was a period of time where it was hard to meet new people, and
Mhm.
now I don't know if people are kind of excited post-pandemic or what it is, but I'll go to yoga or whatever, and someone will be like, "Oh, come to, this festival at my home," or, come to this and invite me and stuff. And I'm like, "Wow, that's so nice. What a sense of community." I think there is a sense of community at the gym.
Yeah, and also, like, even we mentioned that at PTA meeting, I think people want to be out. Like, even we had like our back to school night and the PTA at a table. A lot of people were like, "Yeah, I want to." People want a community. They want to, if they haven't, if they're still kind of, because some people are still kind of post pandemic kind of life, and just kind of finding those opportunities for people to get together. I think they really,
Yeah.
yeah. I've found I'm meeting a lot of people lately in different
Right?
places. Yeah.
Yeah, something's in the air. So, cool. What else do you have built on your list?
I think that's it. I
Oh,
feel like.
nice. Yeah, self-care is a really good one. I love I'm glad we talked about exercise. I try to talk about exercise every episode
Mhm.
because I think that, as for me, I did not even realize that this was a thing that happened until it happened. When I had my first daughter, I didn't realize I had this preconceived notion that a woman stops exercising once you have kids. And it makes sense in a way because when the babies are young, you are
Yeah.
completely a slave to their schedule,
Yeah.
obviously. And my child was eating every 2 hours at
Oh
that
wow.
time. I
Wow.
mean, it
Yeah.
was intense. But and I mentioned this too in another episode, but I got in a car accident
Oh.
recently. Not recently, like a couple
Mhm.
years ago. And it was intense. I mean, my whole left side really suffered. And so I was forced to
Mhm.
do physical activity
Mm.
again. Otherwise, I was gonna see, and I kind of almost saw my future because I've seen other people grow
Mhm.
older and they went into,
Mhm.
got into chronic accident or, one accident after another and had chronic pain as a result of it.
Mhm.
And I was like, I can't let that be my fate. I still have young kids.
Mm.
I have to be able to run around after them.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So I think self care is really important, especially if something big happens.
Absolutely, yeah, and just finding, and just like I said, just finding ways to, make it fun, easy in your schedule.
Yeah.
Something that's not like, dread. Sometimes we dread doing it, but I always joke when I get to these exercise classes. I'm like, 95% is just showing up. If
Yeah.
you show up, even if you don't like kill yourself that day,
Yeah.
if you just do like an average routine, and that's your kind of day where you're just kind of, doing the minimum, that's still a ton.
Yeah.
It's better than not going at all.
No,
So I
totally.
always so
Progress isn't linear.
yeah,
I say this all the time.
you don't have to like be, have your heart if you just go and do like what the instructor says, you're just going to get a great, you'll get a great workout. Yeah.
And plus, I feel, I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like for me, if I tell myself I'm going to show up at 7 a.m. at the pickleball court and I show up, my brain is like, oh, okay, we do what we say we're going to
Yes.
do.
Yes.
And then I'm so much more likely to show up the
Yep.
following day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you just like when I exercise, I just feel better. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel so much better
And
afterward.
yeah, and it's hard. I mean, and schedules are, and like when I traveled 2 weeks a month to Asia, I like didn't exercise much at all.
Yeah. But I mean,
And
you're walking around with this, like you're active when you're
Yeah,
traveling.
but I think when those and that's why, folks who are like flight attendants who travel a lot. Again, some folks are really disciplined. Like I had some colleagues who would get up early and be in the jet. I just wasn't that part because you have jet lag and you're trying to, adjust to the new time
Make
zone
it
and get
work.
ready for your meetings. And
Yeah.
I did a lot of things in other languages. So yeah,
Oh, wow.
which is harder, if you're tired to do a meeting in Japanese than in English if you're really tired. So but yeah, but I definitely, yeah, self-care is really, and it's just like finding something you enjoy and then and finding the time of day that it works for you. Yeah, I
I
think that's
like
like
that.
yeah,
That
yeah,
task management is so important,
absolutely.
and also being compassionate and forgiving myself in case it doesn't
Yes,
work out for whatever reason. I feel like
absolutely,
it's
absolutely.
important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And even I try to do like 4 or 5 days a week, but look, if I did three, that would be okay too. Like
Right?
it's not like
And
this
by the
isn't a
way,
marathon.
actually, that's not a bad thing because so I was lifting 5, 7 days a
Mhm,
week, and then my schedule changed because I started doing the
mhm,
yoga certification. I climb also.
mhm,
And what I noticed is when I changed my routine,
mhm,
my plateau ended.
mhm,
So I actually had more progress and more gains. I mean,
mhm.
not that that's always why we do
Yeah.
it. We don't always do it for our
Mhm.
physical attributes, but like I did notice when I changed it up without that being my intention. Have you ever heard of Robin Sharma? He wrote 2 books, The 5 AM Club and The Manifesto of a Hero.
No, I haven't.
So he talked about something that you mentioned. He talked about a 5 AM workout,
Mhm.
which you don't always have to do.
Yeah.
But then it mentioned something you mentioned about taking a walk later in the day too.
Yeah.
So kind of being active like a couple times during the
Mhm.
day and how that kind of helps you, kind of break it up a little bit. And because a lot of people have that 3 p.m. slump,
Yes.
like a 2 p.m., 3 p.m. slump.
Mhm.
And so like taking a walk kind of re-energizes.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So today, I'm starting something. So there's a nonprofit. I'll just give a shout out to them. They're called Active Circle, and they
Okay.
were founded by two. Now they're high school students, middle school students in this area. One is at Cupertino High School, and they do a lot of inclusion events and nature activities and health activities to bring the community together. And they're doing this like pre diabetes, like let's prevent diabetes kind of
Nice.
challenge for 2 months. And I signed up for it, and it just started today.
Very cool.
And there's like a health coach who's kind of leading the group, and it's a nominal, it's a small donation you make, which goes to charity anyway.
Yeah.
And it's just cool because like even today, the guy who's leading it, the doctor just said, okay, wait, I think the goal is to change habits. So
Mhm.
he said this week you're going to try to take a walk after your meal, 30 minutes after your meal. So things
Oh.
like that. So it's just like incorporating new things,
Yeah. Well, this woman on the internet, I don't know if it's true or not, but she said if you make a 1% improvement every day for 365 days, at the end of that year, you're 37 times better. Like when you
Oh,
do
I'm
the
sorry.
math,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's
one
exponential.
incremental improvement. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm kind of excited just to get new idea. And again, I'm kind of passionate about this stuff, so I've read a lot about it. Yeah, but still like it's just like, oh yeah, that's a good thing to do. Take a walk like 30 minutes after a meal, and maybe it could be a time to, uh, be out with my son or my husband and all that kind of stuff. So I like this idea of like changing habits.
Yeah.
Um and with diet and all that kind of stuff too. So mhm.
Yes. Yeah, it's important. Wow, what a great conversation. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much,
No,
Susan, for
thank you
joining me.
too.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
really
I learned a
appreciated
lot
having
too.
Yeah, I really appreciated having you and yeah, thanks for joining and thanks everybody for
Thank
joining on
you.
another episode of Modern Mom. See you next time.